Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another video of mine, Mr. Rook, on the duran.locals.com page. There are multiple things I wanted to talk about today, and I apologize if I look a little worn. I've been out in the, well, I guess I live in Florida. I'm a citizen of Florida, and I've been out in what is already a hot summer day, and essentially, I won't get into the details because the work was kind of gross, very gross. But because of that, I was out in the hot Florida sun in essentially a hazmat suit, a painter suit, like a gas mask on, and if you're not aware, there's not a whole lot of airflow through those things, so I'm pretty tired, and right after recording this, I'm going to be hopping in the shower because I am gross also. I wanted to touch on a few different things. The first, the F-16, and I'm going to try to link this in a comment to Mr. Cristoforo's video, where he asked for people to add comments on the F-16 down below. My understanding of the F-16, and for anyone who wants a little more background, I've given a little bit more each video, but I live in Florida. I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years, U.S. Marine Corps, to be clear. I went to school and got an engineering degree. A little bit more about me, if it gives you a better idea for some of the people who have watched some of my other videos, and if you would like to get a better understanding of my perspective on things. For instance, I think it was my 16th birthday, I asked my grandparents to get me a book that was a collection of Sun Tzu's The Art of War, The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli, and Frederick the Great's Instructions to His Generals. And I read all of those through. Machiavelli, brilliant and terrifying. And on a random side note, I would say, like, Hillary Clinton is basically a more ruthless and less intelligent version of Machiavelli. Maybe just less charismatic. Well, I don't know how charismatic he was in real life and dealing with people, but, and actually that reminds me of what I want to talk about next. But first, the F-16. My understanding of the F-16, and as you may have guessed from that intro, I've just gradually pretty much studied history, and especially military history, throughout my entire life. And especially over the last few years, I've been looking more into, okay, well, is this tank the best? Is that tank the best? What does this plane do best? What was this weird biplane design that was, which actually, what is it? I can't remember. It wasn't the Parasite fighter. Basically, if anyone looks up, I should look it up, but I'll just mention it in passing. There was a fighter that was designed and tested, and it actually did surprisingly well. That is basically looks like a coffee bean with wings on the side, and it was supposed to be essentially for a flying aircraft carrier, and these things would lower down from a bomber, and they would be the fighter escort, and they wouldn't have much fuel in them because, you know, they didn't need to. They would be carried by the bomber. But it is hilarious to look at if anyone's interested. But I've spent a good amount of time looking at various planes throughout all of history. If anyone's curious, Rex's hangar for aircraft, especially, I think he focuses primarily on older aircraft, but Rex's hangar, REX''S hangar, on YouTube is really interesting, really fascinating, especially if you want to learn about weird, effective, ineffective designs that never got off the ground, designs that people sunk a whole lot of money into, and then they never got off the ground. But again, I'm going off on a tangent. The F-16, to my understanding, is for third-generation aircraft, which, for those who aren't aware, it basically went, I can't remember what really fell into each category specifically, but went first generation, second generation, third generation, and then while everyone was kind of like developing what they assumed the fourth generation would be, America was like, boom, F-22. And you know what? We skipped a generation. We're going straight to generation 5. So But of the third generation aircraft, the F-16, to my understanding, is one of, if not the best, air superiority fighter in the world. I couldn't figure out whether I should say fighter or fighters, because I said one of, so that would be plural, but then I said, if not the, which would be singular English. What strikes me as odd about it being mentioned about potentially coming into the Ukrainian conflict, one, I think it would take quite some time to train up, even if you have experienced Ukrainian pilots, they're probably, almost certainly, trained and experienced in Soviet-style aircraft. And, you know, a lot of those skills and understandings, they do carry over. That's why test pilots throughout history would be, you know, they're flying a brand new plane, but they have the skills and abilities to fly said plane. However, it obviously would take longer to train them up on F-16s than, say, MiG-29s. That is I get the numbers mixed up. I don't know as much about Soviet aircraft, honestly. But the F-16 is essentially what the F-22 Raptor is today, or it was what the F-22 Raptor is today. It is not designed for ground attack. I'm not sure if, I would assume, and I know that especially the American military loves multi-role stuff, and they like taking one thing that's already built and adapting it to something else. I would assume someone somewhere has come up with, and even some militaries may use, because a lot of nations generally friendly to America, they use F-16s as their primary fighter or air superiority fighter. But generally, it is not a ground attack aircraft. To my understanding, and if anyone has any information to debunk this, please do, because well, you know, like everybody else, it's hard to get solid information on what's going on in Ukraine. But to my understanding, Russia isn't relying heavily on aircraft to strike Ukraine and to grind down Ukraine. I don't think they see it as necessary. They have the ballistic missiles they need. They have the artillery they need. And they're essentially using that, you know, artillery can strike targets close to the front. Ooh, excuse me. Relatively close to the front. Obviously, it's artillery, it can shoot a long distance, but in the grand scale of Ukraine as a whole country, artillery can't reach very far. But then they have their ballistic missiles. So if you're not in a fight trying to shoot down a bunch of aircraft to gain air superiority, then the F-16 really isn't very useful. A lot of other aircraft are, but that's the entire point of the F-16 is air superiority. Whatever else is in the sky, we're going to take it out. Unfortunately, it's a little old, but it is still a very good plane, to my understanding. If there's some like aircraft expert or fighter jet pilot who's like, no, it's shit, I flew it before and my friend got shot dead. I don't know. I don't know specifics on it, but that's my understanding from what I've seen and read and heard over the years. But like I said, if your goal is not to shoot down Russian planes, then it's not really useful. So there's the F-16. Another point. This is just something that's bothered me recently. Generally, I'm sure anyone who is a little more suspicious and cautious about believing what Western leaders and media agencies are saying about Ukraine, what you've all probably heard before, if you try to, give a slightly contrarian perspective or point of view, is, well, you're just defending Putin? What, you think Putin's a good guy? No. And I thought about this a lot today as I was doing all this manual labor. It doesn't take a lot of thought, but it was hot. It was very hot. And I thought the best way I could summarize it is if I was basically, I don't want to be Putin's enemy. And specifically, let's say if I was a Russian citizen, I wouldn't want to be Putin's enemy because I would find myself probably stabbed in the back. Now, in America, as an American citizen, I would never want to be Hillary Clinton's friend, because I would assume at some point I would find a knife in my back. So, I don't want to be Putin's enemy. I don't want to be Hillary Clinton's friend. Both of those claims are for the exact same reason, because I don't want a knife in the back. A little bit of a joke, but I've said, and I seriously believe this, I think there are various people, especially Hillary Clinton, just, I can't get past the vibe she gives off. And the way I've told people in the past is I genuinely, really do believe that Hillary Clinton would gladly murder me for a candy bar. If she wanted a Snickers and someone told her, hey, I'll give you this Snickers, just go stab that guy in the chest. Okay, well, just kill him. Side point. Generally, what bothers me about the talk about, well, Putin's a bad guy, he did this and he did that, I agree. My biggest concern, and basically the whole reason I don't feel the need to focus on that, is that you guys are too busy being, pardon my language, fucking nuts. Whether it's with respect to Ukraine, whether it's with respect to the green agenda, even though we want to shut down nuclear energy, which is the most reliable, relatively green source of energy. It's the best return on investment in terms of the impact it has on the environment and the amount of energy you get from it. But no, that's very bad. That's very bad. No, we need wind and solar, and that's it. Also, I said I had an engineering degree. I took a course in alternative and renewable energies, and basically everything except nuclear. This professor, who was actually, he was an asshole, but he was one of the professors I respected the most. He clearly knew what he was talking about. Unfortunately, he was British, but Alexander's cool, so I'll let that slide. But basically every energy source besides nuclear, of the alternative and renewable, he just said, well, at the end of each discussion on it would end with, well, and it won't solve all our problems. It's just not enough. Even when you factor in all these other things, it's just not enough. It's just not feasible. Even if we were to invest in it heavily. And then we get to nuclear, and he says, well, some people don't like it. So when people who are supposedly care about the planet say, no nuclear, that's when I stop taking you seriously, if I haven't already stopped taking you seriously. Similarly, not similarly, entirely different topic. I, on the way to going and doing this work in the sun in a hazmat suit earlier today, if you're curious, it was basically, I'm trying to move things out of a house that doesn't have air conditioning running right now. And the house is essentially a biohazard. But that's a side point. Alexander, I think it was Alexander talking about essentially how it is awful and, in his British accent, reprehensible that there's this talk and there's this acceptance within Western leadership, within Western leaders, I'll say rulers. Something feels off about calling them leaders. Well, it's probably pretty obvious. I don't think they lead. But of Western rulers, they want to fight this war to the last Ukrainian. And this kind of, I would connect this to what Gonzalo said fairly recently, that basically people think, this Ukraine conflict may turn into a Russia-NATO war. And he said, well, it essentially is a Russia-NATO war. NATO is sending all these weapons to Ukraine, and Ukraine has one of the largest reserves of combat veterans in the world, really. I do have to take issue with that because America and some of the other countries who, in Iraq and Afghanistan, whatever you think about those, not a fan, personally. Although I will say, when I was in the Marine Corps, I was sad I wasn't going to get to deploy. And then after, I thought, oh, good Lord. Thank you, Jesus, I didn't get deployed. But there is a solid reserve in the West of people who, while it may not be, say, the majority of, say, the infantry force, there are enough people who are experienced in combat, at least either still in the military or available to help train and lead the next generation of warfighters if a war were to break out. But I do think he's right. Ukraine has the most combat veterans at the moment. But what struck me about this is, one, I entirely agree with Alexander. It is awful that, well, as usual, there are people who have an agenda. They have something they want to happen, and maybe they're good people. I don't know. Maybe they have a good heart, and they're just really, really, really stupid. But that has described a lot of human history, so that's possible. They may also be twirling their mustache and like Dr. Evil. Though I maybe we should just give them $1 million and they'll go away. But what bugs me about that is, one, what they're doing to Ukraine, and two, these leaders. I'll say, if Biden thought it was feasible to put 100,000 American troops into Ukraine today, I think he would do it. And I think with many Western leaders, and if you look at just what they do on a daily basis, on whatever crisis, on whatever issue they claim is most important on that given day, they do not care. I don't think almost any of these leaders, these rulers, would ever, if it wasn't going to affect them personally, if it wasn't going to negatively affect them, I don't think they would ever say, oh, well, yeah, but, people would die. It would have this negative effect. I just wouldn't feel good about that. I don't feel right doing that. I just don't think, whether it's that they don't have a conscience or that they do have a conscience, but they're so invested in this mission, this goal they have, and they think this is what's good for humanity. If we just get rid of Putin, and then we can surround China, and we can bring about this new Star Trekian world order, and apparently in the new show, Stacey Abrams is the president of the world, which is perfect. Sorry, I'm in a slightly comical mood today. To quote A Knight's Tale, I only laugh so as not to weep. I didn't get that quote right. But one, I think these leaders would gladly put boots on the ground if they felt it was feasible, if they felt they wouldn't immediately, basically, I think if they thought they had more backing, they would do it like that. Alongside that, what bothers me, and this is my last point of the day, sorry, like I said, it's been manual labor, but with manual labor, I have time to, think about wars in faraway lands. What concerns me is that basically everything these people are doing on the world stage, strategically, tactically, diplomatically, economically, if you look at it as to, basically, if you look at everything they're doing, it just looks like this jumbled mess of things. And surely many of these people, if not all, are extremely incompetent. All of them, I would say with fair certainty, are at least moderately incompetent. So maybe it is that it's just a mess. They just don't know how to put into action what they want to see on the world stage. However, if in my opinion, and from what I've seen, and like I said, I've thought about this a lot, there's one missing piece. There's one missing piece that makes a lot of different things make sense. There's one missing piece that, if it's true, and if that does actually complete the puzzle that we're headed for and that we have in front of us, then it would make sense for Ukraine to fight on. It would make sense for all of these various economic things, Europe basically screwing itself, just blowing itself up, figuratively, obviously. They won't be able to because they won't have any gas. Maybe America will loan them some C4 or something because they won't have any money left. Lend-lease, yeah. We'll lend-lease you C4 to commit suicide. But the one thing, as far as I've seen, in the mental image I have of this whole picture, of this whole map, is NATO boots on the ground. And not necessarily the NATO alliance is going to go to war with Russia, possibly, but if, it's going on in the backgrounds, and there's already been talk about Poland entering Western Ukraine. That's been pretty well talked about and documented here on the Duran. But it bothers me and it worries me that the one piece that would suddenly, in my view, make this whole jumbled puzzle coalesce into a picture that makes sense is boots on the ground of NATO countries or whatever countries. I mean, hell, basically every country around and near Ukraine, almost. Many of them. I actually don't know the status of most of the Balkan states. I think the Baltics are. I don't know. That's something that's not really an area of expertise for me. But if multiple nations are planning and intending to put boots on the ground in Ukraine and bring essentially the entire military might of the West against Russia, everything makes more sense. My voice cracked. Everything makes more sense. I hope that is not the case. I hope these I hope the God complex elites behind the scenes just decide they're bored and they want to go home and stop messing with Ukraine. Because, whatever, if Russia is run by someone who we don't like, and who doesn't kowtow to us. I think it was yesterday I posted a video about incentive structures, so I don't think they will back down on that. And I don't think what I have taken to calling, that's the Top Hat Monocle Club, and I also don't think what I have taken to calling the parasitic sociopaths, aka the leaders of the world, of the West, have any reason to push back. So like I said, I hope my mental image of trying to put this puzzle together is not accurate. I hope and pray that I'm wrong, but honestly, I would say it's a 50-50, it's a 50-50 split. If I was gonna place bets, I can't go one way or another, because either all of these people are so, again, pardon my language, so fucking incompetent that they are putting forward this absolute jumbled mess of nonsense and craziness, or there's a piece of the puzzle that hasn't been officially revealed yet, but would make the entire picture make sense. So, that is my current perspective and my current concern. I hope somebody, this is a bit longer than my other ones, but I hope somebody can get something out of this. And well, like I said, if you ever feel like crying, just focus on laughing. As Alex has graciously been reliable about pointing out, we are living in a terrifying world, but it is in fact a clown world. It is a clown world. So, that's it. Thank you. As always, I appreciate the comments, critiques, anything like that. Agree, disagree. just want to kind of get these ideas out there and get whatever feedback I can back. So, so thank you.